Good evening, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. This is the promised rear brake drum video for my 1997 Ford E-150 Starcraft conversion van. I am only going to film one side because the other side is the same, just flipped 180. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, here's the setup. The main reason we're going in here is, you see that kind of wet muddiness on the cylinder? That means it's leaking fluid. It's bad. The symptom here is I had an extremely low pedal. It would only bite towards the end, and the way your brake pedal works is your rear brakes are supposed to kick in kind of at the top of the travel, and then you get into your front brakes towards the end of the travel. That's how that's supposed to work. So I figured since I'm doing a wheel cylinder, I'm going to go ahead and do the whole thing, because on the other side, which I did not film because I went ahead and did that so I could get familiar with this, because drums are tricky, the pads separated. It was just metal shoes. Well, the brake pad element had separated from the shoes. Anyway, this is your setup. If you've never done drums, you can use basic tools to make it happen, but wear your patience hat. You're going to need it. Very first thing we do is we're going to take a bunch of pictures from every conceivable angle, because I don't care how good your memory is or how fancy you think you are, you're going to forget something. And the pictures are going to save your butt. So do it. So let me go do that. Alright, for this repair, this is the kind of stuff you're going to need. I know this is sacrilege, but AC Delco is more than this GM house brand, because reasons, you can look it up sometime. But this is an AC Delco drum kit, 18K954. So you're going to need that. This should cover both sides. You are going to need a wheel cylinder. I am not sure which side this is, but I'll rattle off both part numbers. W610164 is the Dorman, and then your other one is W610163. Though that being said, you may not want to buy Dorman, because I had the other one installed and there was a pinhole leak in the seal. It was no good. It's fantastic. So I went to the local parts store and I stuck in one of theirs, and that appears to be working. So you'll need that, and then you're going to need brake shoes from somebody. I went with Power Stop. These are Power Stop's B723. Now, the one saving grace with drums is it's not horribly expensive to rebuild them in most cases. Both sides, the kit, the shoes, everything was less than $80 when ordered online. So let's get into it. I don't have a tripod, so I'm going to talk about it, and then I'll do it. We'll talk about it. First thing you need to do is remove these top two springs, because what I found is the easiest way to do this is take off one shoe, then take off the other shoe, then take out the wheel cylinder. So we start up here, take off these springs. They're going to be tight. Locking pliers are your friends here, or having someone who's got significantly more arm strength than you do. Bear in mind, these are springs. They are storing energy right now. So if you're not comfortable taking these off, don't. Get somebody to help you. Or go get the tools that make this a little more safer, the specialty drum tools. Because if this slips and you got a finger in the way or a hand or something, it's going to gash and it's going to hurt. So be careful. Springs can be vicious. So we'll work our way across. Get that off. That will get this off. Let's let you take that off. Let's let you come down here and take this off and that off. Then once all that is done, I'll bring you back to talk about how to actually remove the shoe. It's this jobber here that holds it to the backing plate. Working our way down the rear side, the side facing the back of the vehicle, this is your next step. Take this guy off, and once you do that, you should have some wiggle room, and that'll let you also finish removing this up here, this cross piece that runs across the back there over to here, And then you can wiggle off your star wheel adjuster down here, and at this point this will be fairly isolated and you'll be able to pop that off. And then you can actually, you got to work on this as well, so delay that. Before we pop this off or take this spring out, we're going to go ahead and get this guy off. This holds a chunk of the parking brake actually, so we need to get a screwdriver and kind of push that off first. Alright, so I was able to go ahead and just wiggle this out. Notice you want to try to keep your parts together, and where that, like this little end goes, how it lays out, kind of keeping that together over there. Remember, I'm doing a full rebuild, so I really don't care what happens too much to these piston arms. You will have to reuse these, by the way. They do not come with your new wheel cylinder, so you may want to clean these up when you go to do that. Anyway, I got this out. Pro tip, I used needle nose locking pliers, and once I grabbed in, I used the axle hub there as leverage, popped it out. So we're down to here. The way these work is, you notice it's 90 degrees off, that's how it holds. So take your pliers, grab top and bottom there, push it forward, rotate it to line up, and then the spring and the cap come off. The pin will fall out the back, and then you should be able to remove the shoe. Behind the shoe is going to be this big long arm for the parking brake. And this little booger up here is the thing that holds the two together. That's why you had to take them apart, so that you can fully separate the shoe. Alright, I took the other spring off that's up here. Again, locking pliers and some grunt will get it off. Do be careful. And once you've done that, as long as you took the other side of this long spring out, which you already unhooked on the rear side, on the front side, all that's left is to pull this pin. Yep, see that? The wheel cylinder is actively leaking right now. Awesome. Make sure you got some brake fluid on hand, because that's going to be a thing. So like I said earlier, you can grab these. And I don't have the pliers set right, but you just kind of showing you here. You grab these, you push in, and then you rotate, and then they'll come off. I need to loosen these up. Anyway, that'll be that. This is that parking arm I was talking about. If this falls out, if you lose the grip on the actual parking cable, not a huge deal. It's not too bad to put back in. And the OEM, by the way, is Bindex. If any of you guys played the early Gran Turismos, you'll know that name. And that's the post. Alright, let me get this off, and then this whole shoe comes off, and then we can work on the wheel cylinder itself. Alright, well, we can leave those in. Okay, so you can see the failure was right there. It's actually bubbling. Alright, what we're actually here to talk about. So I'm going to go upside down on you, but in this kind of, there it goes. So you've got a pair of 13 millimeter nuts. They shouldn't be on too tight. You've got your bleeder, you got your brake line. Your brake line nut, your flare nut there is a 7/16. Be nice to it, because depending on age and corrosion, it may start trying to twist the brake line. And if you don't catch it, you'll snap your brake line, and then you're running new hard line. Ask me how I know. Different vehicle, learning curve. So bleeder is going to be a 3/8. You don't need to do anything with it, just letting you know. Pop those 13s, take care of your brake line first, then pop the 13s, and then you may have to get a mallet to help kind of tap the wheel cylinder out, but then you'll have it. Alright, after I did a couple of tippy taps with a 1-pound hammer, came out. So at this point, don't be in a rush to throw new hardware in. You got to clean, because a lot of people don't know it, but there are contact points on a drum. Here, 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 and then on the other side here, here, and here. And it's just a good idea to get in here, generally with some brake cleaner or some other solvent, and clean this all out, clean those contact points because they need to be greased in the perfect world. Throw some grease on them. Some people throw anti-seize on there. Either or. Point is, you need to get in here, clean this up. There's a lot of trapped brake shoe dust and things like that in here. If you have an opportunity to clean it, go ahead. Also, bear in mind, if you've got fluid in your master, you're going to be leaking at this point. As you can see, I think I'll go grab my pan so I'm not leaking straight on the concrete. You got two choices here, really. You can get a block. Well, three choices. You can get a block, screw that onto your brake line. That'll keep it from leaking. You can press the pedal down, and as long as the master cylinder is fully deployed, displacement can't happen and it won't leak. But that means you got to keep the pedal on the floor. Or option 3 is you have some brake fluid on hand and you just top off the master as you work, because the drip rate's not too crazy, and that's just the easiest of the 3, but that's just 3 things that you can do. So I'm going to get all of this cleaned up, and I'll bring you back when it's time to clean up the pistons. Alright, so just so you get your gross going on. I have more cans, that's why I'm being so liberal in the use here. Carbon. Anyway, let me get this. Alright, so I've kind of cleaned everything out to my satisfaction. And as you can see, this is just bearing grease for front bearings, and it'll more than stand up to the temperatures that get generated back here. So what this is if you look at a brake shoe, you see these points here, there, that lines up with those contact points. And I could tell you from looking at this wasn't serviced properly. There were deep score marks in these pads. They weren't greased. So anywho, I'm going to go ahead and insert this Dorman cylinder. Hopefully it does not leak like its companion did, and I have to drive back to the parts store in shame and get another one. But just kind of sneak this in there. You're going to want to put your 13 millimeters in there first, lock it in place, and then feed in your brake line. You'll know you've grabbed the wrong one if the brake line is on the wrong side, or the hole for it's on the wrong side. So anywho, I'm going to go do that, get all that tight, and the bonus there is then that stops your drip, right? So we'll do that, and then once the cylinder's in place, we got to clean up the piston arms and start the rebuild. Alright guys, I've got this over my vise. This is one of the piston arms that came from the original cylinder. You don't get new piston arms when you buy a cylinder. You got to buy them separate. In this case, since they're all nasty and crusted, I don't want to have that inserted into the seal where it could potentially tear the seal. So I'm going to take my wire wheel here and just wire wheel this up, get it nice and clean, or get the crap out of it. It's going to be pitted because I'm reusing it. In a perfect world, you would just get a new one, but didn't think about it, so we're going with it. Alright, as you can see, got those shined up. I've got them reinstalled. I also cracked the bleeder so that air will get purged out of the cylinder. You can see it's starting to drip again, so it'll be ready to go. But we do not want to push the brake pedal at any point in time because it will extend these arms out. You won't be able to get them back in unless you compress them back in. Remember, a wheel cylinder is basically a double-sided piston. That's what it is, and it pushes these arms into the shoes push the drum, and then you stop. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and start putting our shoes back on and all of our springs and all of the other fun stuff. New shoes are down over there, and they are not the same. They are not the same. So, take a look. You actually have a primary and a secondary shoe. The primary shoe has thicker pad on it. The secondary shoe has thinner pad. You'll also notice there's a pin down here. And what this pin is for is this is where the adjuster for your star wheel, which is the adjuster, the spreader that goes at the bottom of the shoes, that spring and that spreader sits here. So this has to be on the correct side, and because it can't go like that, that's not right, it means this is going to be facing rearward like this, and this guy is going to be facing like this. Alright, so remember those pictures I told you to take? This is where they get really important. You're going to slowly reassemble. Pay attention to those pictures. And if you are not sure, go back to your pictures. If this is the first side you're working on and you think the other side of your vehicle is okay, go look on that side. It'll be 180 flip, but the order of the springs and everything will be correct. Go do that. So I'm going to start the rebuild. I'll bring you back if there's like a little tip or a trick as we are putting things back together. Otherwise, reassembly is this kind of reverse of removal. Reference your pictures. Okay, another pro tip here. To make it so you can do this one-handed, get a clamp. You can clamp the shoe roughly in the right position, and then that makes putting this back on way easier. And by the way, we're starting with the front side shoe. The shoe needs to be back up here. Don't forget, before you put on the big spring that goes up top here, you need to have this little anvil thing back on, and you need to have this parking brake adjuster thing back on. Then you can run your green spring, because the spring's supposed to go in front of all of that. Ask me how I know. Made that mistake on the other side. Alright, we'll keep moving. Alright, for installing this, what you're going to want to do, or at least the way I am doing it, is you go ahead, you pop this in to the other shoe, and then you get the other shoe installed. You install its little its pin, for lack of a better term, and then once you've got it pinned, then you work on installing the washer and the little clip that actually holds these two together. That is my strategy. Might want to clean that real quick, but yeah, that's my strategy. I'll show you specifically what I do to try to get it slid in. But again, if you got a clamp, use a clamp to kind of push it together, get it in position. Use a clamp, get this in, and then you can tighten that up. And then after that, you're going to need to insert this crossbar here. It goes there with this little twisty spring, and then you'll have to do the other top spring. But we'll get there. Okay, before you attach your other big spring up top, you have to run this crossbar thing. Don't forget the little washer thing it has over here. You push the spring all the way on, it'll stay because it's twisted. Get that in, hook it in over here. Your big spring hooks into here. Don't forget the cable guide that goes on it. And when you put all this in, the cable guide goes across the top. It goes over the spring, not under it. If you go under it, you'll have to wrestle it back out. Alright, I'll bring you back when all that is done, and we're down to the bottom. Alrighty folks, so what you want to do is, again, I used a clamp to help get this in position. Remember, your wire needs to go over the spring so it can go back and around. May have to bend this back a little bit, but it's supposed to go back and around that guide right there. And then it comes down and it'll hook onto the prowl. So before you put the prowl in, you need to put your star wheel in, or your spreader, which is here. And you get that in first, and you put a couple turns on it so it doesn't fall out. And then you need to run your final spring, this purple guy. Spring side is on the forward shoe, and then the long side is on the rearward shoe where the prowl is going to go. And once you do that, the last thing you need to do is install the prowl, which is pretty straightforward. And then you're going to hook this onto it. See how there's a hook right there? And at that point, double check your work, but you are done. Okay, at this point, you should be done. So you route that around the thing, comes down here. Apologies, there we go. Hooks onto the prawl. The spring goes around the lower jaw of the prawl right there. The actual spring, if my camera will behave, there we go, goes behind the prawl. So spring on the post first, then the prawl, run that around, and that's it. And if you did everything right, if you've got the star wheel, since these are brand new shoes and they're pretty meaty, if the star wheel has no extension on it, the spreader, it should be that when you go to put the drum on, it's already going to be pretty tight. But if your parking brake is working correctly, that's what this is all about, and this is all about. When you hit your parking brake, it's going to spread this up. It'll turn this up, and it's going to turn it as far as it can and automatically adjust the shoes to fit the drum snug. If that's working right. Sometimes they don't. So anyway, we're going to put the drum on, and then I need to address a slow leak from the brake line where it goes into the wheel cylinder. Oh, forgot to mention, make sure that your piston arms are in their little grooves. For them to fit correctly, they pretty much have to be, but check them, make sure those are good. Take a look around, make sure you don't have any brake fluid that is leaking out of your cylinder, because at this point you can still get the cylinder out at this point, but it is a pain in the butt to get it out and get it back in without at least taking those top springs off. So let's see what we get. One thing I almost forgot to mention is make sure, see that right there? That is it's an inspection port that also lets you manually adjust the spreader, the star wheel, if you need to. Don't forget to switch out that plug. Often they are missing, forgotten, or they're worn out. So make sure you switch that out too before you declare victory. And also double, triple check your brake line up there. It's actually the next morning. I kept seeing brake fluid show up where it shouldn't show up. And I checked this morning, and it turned out I had a very slow leak out of both brake lines. So I just tightened them up a little more, and then I just did a bunch of crash stops on the pedal. And they stay dry. So I think we're finally good. Alrighty guys, that is going to do it as far as how to do a complete overhaul of the rear brakes on your 1997 Ford E-150. So if this video helped you out, if you learned something, is educational, or if it amused you, please consider like, share, subscribe. That helps to grow the channel. Also, leave a comment. I like to read them, I like to learn from them, and I like to reply to them. And remember guys, I make the mistakes so you don't have to. Catch you next episode.